It felt like death was in the air the moment I dropped that photograph into the flame. I watched the edges curl inward, first blackening and then flaking away in delicate ashes. The corners of the image glowed like embers, and for an instant I could still make out her face. Soft smile, bright eyes. My wife Hannah, the woman I vowed to love until the end. The heat of the flame startled me, but I didn't pull away. I let the picture burn until the flame danced too close to my fingers. Then I opened my hand. The remains fluttered onto the dark kitchen counter, still smoldering. I heard the clock tick in the background, each second stretching like an hour. It felt as though the ashes carried not just the memory, but an entire life's worth of illusions. The stink of charred paper and plastic lingered in the air. I found that photo in the back of our closet just a few minutes before, shoved between old magazines and a set of bedding we never used. We'd taken that picture on our 8th anniversary. We were at some quaint little restaurant in downtown Seattle. She wore a simple red dress, the one that clung to her waist, and I still remember how her hair fell over her shoulders in loose waves that night. Back then, looking at that snapshot, I believed in us. I believed we'd grow old together, fighting over small things but always making up by bedtime. I was a fool. Everything had changed. I lifted my gaze from the charred bits toward the rest of our kitchen. The small table with 2 chairs, the fridge plastered in magnets from places we'd visited, the fading postcards. The overhead light flickered once, perhaps from a loose bulb or a glitch in the wiring we'd never bothered to fix. In the sink stood a tower of dishes, reminding me I hadn't felt like cleaning since. Well, I couldn't recall the last time I truly wanted to do anything. My heart felt hollow, as though I had died on the inside weeks ago. I closed my eyes, inhaling slowly, letting the burning odor anchor me to this moment. My mind drifted back to the day I discovered something wasn't right. It started innocently. A note on the calendar. Dry cleaner, Saturday 11 a.m. Perfectly normal at first glance, until I realized it was the only thing she'd planned for that entire weekend. Hannah rarely used the weekend for errands like that. She usually scheduled chores when I was at work, or she did them on weekday afternoons, especially since her freelance projects had a flexible schedule. Why a Saturday morning? And why, out of nowhere, did she start giving me that polished smile, that quiet politeness that didn't quite feel real? We'd stopped arguing altogether, which might sound like a good thing, but to me it was an alarm bell. She no longer challenged my choices, no longer bristled if I forgot to take out the trash. She just let it slide. So well-mannered, so quiet. Too quiet. That Saturday I offered to go with her, but she insisted I stay home and relax. I remember the warmth of her hand on my shoulder as she told me with a sweet smile, "Joe, you deserve a break. You work too hard." The dryness in her voice contradicted the softness of her words. Her eyes didn't sparkle the way they used to. Something had turned off inside her, and my gut churned with suspicion. I decided to test that suspicion. When she left for the dry cleaner, I followed her at a distance. I remember every detail. The squeak of my old Ford's brakes, the heavy morning clouds, the glare off the windshield as I tried to keep her car within view. She didn't go to the dry cleaner. She drove downtown, found a parking spot near a park, and stepped out with a coat slung over her arm. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. I watched her walk briskly into that park, scanning the crowds. And then I saw him. He was tall, lean, wearing a bright outfit that made him look like some kind of costumed entertainer. Later, I'd find out his name was Ryan Collins, an animator who organized children's parties and events. But right then, all I knew was that my wife had greeted him with a swift kiss on the lips. Not on the cheek. Right on the mouth, like she'd done it 1,000 times. Like it was her second nature. I remember the way she touched his arm, the way he bent forward to whisper something into her ear. She laughed. A laugh I hadn't heard in months. It was light, carefree, real. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. A surge of anger shot through my chest. colliding with shock, confusion, and an odd sense of numbness all at once. There was that flickering moment where part of me wanted to burst out of the car, stride over to them, and demand what the hell was going on. But I was paralyzed. I watched as they walked through the trees. The park was busy. Families with kids, runners with their dogs, couples strolling hand in hand. Yet it felt like those two were in a world of their own. I recall the smell of my coffee going cold in the cup holder, the crinkling sound of my jacket when I shifted in the seat. Minutes stretched on. I wanted to close my eyes and pretend I hadn't seen any of it. Eventually, they disappeared into a more secluded area. My pulse hammered in my ears. I followed, albeit clumsily, leaving my car on the street. Behind a cluster of tall hedges, they found a bench. She nestled against him, and he pulled her closer. My entire body trembled. I couldn't hear their words, but I saw her lips moving, saw the movement of his hands along her back. I saw the desire in her expression. Hannah's eyes sparkled like they hadn't in so long. And then, with people milling about not too far away, they let their closeness slip into something more intimate. She let him press his mouth to her neck. She tilted her head back, her fingers sliding through his hair. It was a bold display, an undeniably erotic undertone right there, in a public park, with her body pressed to his. That fleeting glimpse was enough. The rest I only imagined. My stomach churned, and a bitter taste filled my mouth. I fled. I stumbled back to my car as if in a daze, my heart pounding like war drums. I remember banging my fist on the steering wheel once, just once, a muffled grunt escaping my lips. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I drove home in silence, even though my mind was howling. The memory of that day was so painful, I tried to bury it under a mountain of denial. But you can't bury something that's still alive and clawing at your insides. Days later, she kept acting like everything was normal, or better than normal. She was radiant, more affectionate on the surface, but I felt it was forced, like she wanted to keep me calm, keep me placated. I recall the night she slipped into bed next to me and tried to cuddle. I turned onto my side, feigning exhaustion. Every small gesture of hers felt like a lie. Time ticked by. I told myself I needed proof, real proof, before confronting her. But deep down, I knew what was happening. Maybe I just needed some unstoppable truth that would tear through the illusions. I found the truth a few weeks later. A suspicious text on her phone about meeting up in the park again. She'd left her phone charging while she showered. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her messages. There he was, Ryan Collins. Their words to each other were playful, intimate, full of inside jokes, hidden references, and talk of her pregnancy scare. My mind reeled. A pregnancy scare. She and I had never stopped being intimate, though recently it felt obligatory or mechanical on her part. The text indicated that she wasn't entirely certain the baby, if there was one, would be mine. That's when I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. A DNA test for our daughter, Lily. Lily was 3 years old. She was the light of my life. But for the past couple of months, I'd felt a nagging worry that she didn't look much like me. She had hazel eyes, Hannah's eyes, and hair so light it almost seemed golden in the sun. My family has always had darker, brownish hair. I never questioned it, not truly. But my doubt began to devour me from the inside the moment I read those texts. In secret, I arranged for a test. I felt despicable for doing it behind Hannah's back. Part of me wanted the test to come back conclusive that Lily was mine, so I could cling to that last shred of hope. But fate spat in my face. The results proved she wasn't my biological daughter. Hannah had known this. She had to have known, or at least suspected. She must have realized how the timing lined up. All that time, I was raising a child that wasn't mine, loving her with every beat of my heart. When I saw those results, printed in stark black and white, I felt my soul shrivel. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. I sat in my car for over an hour, the papers in my trembling hands, as people walked by in the parking lot. The sky outside had that dull grayness of a Pacific Northwest afternoon, and a light drizzle tapped against the windshield. It felt like the entire world had gone cold. I don't remember driving home. My mind was a haze of half-formed thoughts. Lily was at daycare. Hannah was presumably out, maybe with him. So the house was empty. I walked through our living room like a ghost. Photos of us on the walls. Pictures of Lily's first steps, family dinners, Christmas gatherings. They mocked me. I wandered aimlessly until I found myself in the laundry room, staring at our hamper full of clothes waiting to be washed, and at the pile of shirts I planned to iron that weekend. I'd always been the one to iron my own shirts. Something about the simple, methodical routine calmed me. Right then, though, it felt like an escape from an impossible reality. I set up the ironing board, turned on the iron, and began smoothing out one shirt after another. Each hiss of steam was like a tiny exhalation of anger. The cotton fibers relaxed under the heat, each wrinkle vanishing beneath my firm press, shirt after shirt. In them, there was no lie, no betrayal. They were just garments, honest in their function. I might have spent hours there if I hadn't heard the key turn in the door. She came in, calling my name. "Joe, are you home?" Her voice echoed. I kept ironing, saying nothing. My heart thudded violently in my chest. She crossed into the doorway of the laundry room, catching sight of me. I didn't look up. The tension seemed to coil in the air. "Joe," she repeated, uncertain. "Hey, how was your day?" She tried for a smile. I pressed the hot iron onto the fabric, letting the hiss fill the silence. Then I set the iron aside and reached into my pocket, pulling out the folded results. I turned and laid them flat on the small table we used for folding clothes. My eyes finally met hers, and the color drained from her face. "What is this?" she whispered, already guessing. I didn't speak. I just let her pick them up, let her read. I heard her sharp intake of breath, like someone struggling for oxygen. Her eyes darted across the lines of text, verifying the impossible. "Joe, I can explain," she began. But no real explanation followed. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then let out a strange, choked sound. I didn't want to hurt you." I felt hollowed, as though my entire core had been scooped out. But I forced myself to remain calm. I said nothing. The clock in the hallway continued ticking. A slow, relentless beat. "Please, Joe," she murmured, stepping closer. I was scared. I thought maybe she was yours. Then I realized she wasn't. And it was too late. "But you love Lily. She's your daughter in every way that matters." She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. My throat felt like it was clamped in a vice, and for a few moments, I thought I might not be able to speak at all. My mind flashed back to that day in the park, to the memory of them entwined on that bench, to the carefree laughter in her eyes that should have been reserved for me. It swirled like a storm in my head. Finally, I managed to find my voice. "Are you sleeping with him again?" I asked quietly. My question hung there like a noose. She didn't answer right away, which was all the confirmation I needed. Her gaze dropped to the floor. "It wasn't supposed to continue," she whispered. "He's nobody." "It was a mistake." "He's not nobody," I said coldly. "He's the father of the little girl I've been raising as my own." She tried to speak again, but her words got tangled in her throat. I could see the tears gathering in her eyes. "I messed up, Joe. I'm so sorry. We were going through a rough patch, and I felt neglected. I needed excitement. He was just there, and it happened. But I love you. I want us to be okay." I wanted to shout at her, demand how she could do this to me, how she could pretend for 3 years. But the anger was overshadowed by a suffocating sense of sorrow. My mind was stuck on Lily, my little girl, and the reality that she wasn't mine in blood. But in everything else, she was. She was the child I rocked to sleep, the one whose first words I recorded on my phone, the baby I'd hold against my chest whenever she cried. That bond was the only thing I could still cling to. But now it too was stained by betrayal. I turned away from Hannah, pressing a palm to my forehead. All I could manage was a ragged exhale. She sobbed quietly behind me. The overhead light flickered again, catching my attention. The laundry room felt suffocating. I had no words left for her that night. I walked out, into the bedroom, into the hallway, trying to find air. It was only after she retreated to the living room, crying, that I returned and put away the iron, neatly folding the shirts I'd pressed. I remember thinking that the shirts were the only part of my life not tainted by deception. In the days that followed, I'd occasionally catch her staring at me, her eyes begging for forgiveness. But I was numb. I functioned like a shell of myself, waking up, going to work, coming home, cooking dinner for Lily. My conversations with Hannah were mechanical. Did you pick up the groceries? How was Lily's day? Don't forget to lock the back door. On the surface, it might have appeared calmer than our usual banter. But there was no warmth, no real connection. All the while, she tried to reach me with small touches, quiet apologies, tears at night. I remained silent, but inside my mind seethed with memories. The good ones were the worst, like tiny knives. Her laughter the first time we danced together, the glow in her eyes on our wedding day, the softness of her hand in mine. My entire sense of reality felt warped. That's when I knew I needed to confront her lover as well. I tracked down his number from her phone. I had to do it in a way that made sense to me, so I wrote him a message. Not a text, not a phone call. I wrote a letter. Because if I'd tried to speak to him directly, I would have ended up doing something I might regret. The letter was short, clipped, like a blade. You and Hannah are free now. Free from lies, free from me, and free from the responsibilities you never had the decency to face. Here's to you both, from the man who once believed in loyalty and truth. You are both free from a real man. I signed it with a flourish of my name, sealed it in an envelope, and wrote Ryan Collins's address on it. An address I'd found on a slip of paper in Hannah's handbag. I waited until she was out that afternoon. Then I left the envelope on the table with a single note pinned to it for her to see. I will read this to you tonight. That same evening, when Lily was asleep, I called Hannah into the dining area. The overhead lamp cast shadows across her face, making her look older, wearier. I stood by the table with the unopened envelope in my hands. My heart hammered, and it struck me that this might be the last time we'd stand face to face in any semblance of normalcy. She looked at me uncertainly. Joe, what is that? In answer, I tore open the envelope and unfolded the paper. My voice came out thick, as if from a stranger. This is a letter I wrote to Ryan, and I want you to hear it, word for word. She hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where Lily slept, likely worried about any noise. But she nodded, voice trembling. Okay. I read it aloud. Ryan, I'm sure you're expecting curses and threats, but you won't get them from me. You know what you've done. Destroyed a marriage, fathered a child you chose not to raise, taken advantage of a woman's weak moment. Perhaps you think you're blameless, that you owe me nothing. You're right. You owe me nothing anymore, because I am freeing you. You and Hannah are free now. Free from lies, free from me, and freed from the responsibilities you never had the decency to face. Here's to you both, from the man who once believed in loyalty and truth. You are both free from a real man. Joe Bancroft. Silence followed. Hannah stared at me, tears brimming in her eyes again. She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. I wanted you to know exactly what I told him. I said quietly, no secrets. That's all I can give you now. Honesty, whether it hurts or not. Her eyes glistened, and she swallowed. Joe, I never wanted it to be this way. I swear. Please, give me a chance to fix this. How do you fix a broken spine? I asked bitterly. Some wounds don't heal. She reached out for my hand, but I stepped back, heart pounding. The ache in my chest was a constant roar. I wanted to turn away from her pleading gaze, but I let her speak. Her voice trembled. I'm begging you. I will do anything. I'll cut off all contact with him. I'll do counseling. I'll do anything you ask. I stared at her, the mother of a little girl who wasn't mine, the woman I had trusted with everything. Yet even in that moment, I felt a deep well of love that refused to vanish. A twisted sense of loyalty that insisted I remember our years together, remember the first time I held her when she was crying over losing her job, remember the soft hush of her voice when she said she couldn't imagine life without me. I felt a tear burn at the corner of my eye, but I blinked it back. I wouldn't cry in front of her. My voice emerged low, almost dead. You ask for forgiveness, but you gave me a life built on lies. The only innocent person in all of this is Lily. She never asked for any of it. The letter fluttered in my fingers. My gaze dropped to it again, reading the lines in my mind. You are both free from a real man. The words sounded final, like an epitaph. I remembered the day I took Lily to the zoo, how she clung to me when she was tired, how she giggled when I lifted her to see the giraffes. My sweet little girl, so full of life. My chest tightened painfully, and I had to steady myself on the back of a chair. Hannah sank to her knees beside me, tears escaping down her cheeks. Her sobs were soft, filled with genuine remorse, or so it seemed. Maybe too late. She pressed her palms to her face. Please, I can't lose you. I looked down at her, an odd calm settling over me. My own voice sounded distant, as if I were reading lines from someone else's script. I never wanted this, but you made your choice when you let him into our life. When you let me raise his child. She sobbed, shoulders trembling. I love you, she whispered, even after everything. I swear I love you. God help me, I believe that on some level. Maybe she did love me, just not enough to keep her vows, not enough to respect me. That realization felt heavier than any anger could. Love that coexists with betrayal can be an agonizing paradox. She lifted her tear-streaked face, and her voice wavered. Do you even know what you're doing? I regarded her in silence, remembering how she once asked me that exact question in a playful way after I'd messed up a recipe. Now, it carried a lethal edge. Yes, I said, your conscience is your verdict. She let out a small broken sound, as if something inside her had shattered. Joe. I turned away, leaving her on the floor. My hand shook as I pressed it against the wall to steady myself. The floor creaked beneath my feet. Somewhere in the distance, the tea kettle began to whistle. I'd left it on the stove, intending to make tea, a habit I'd picked up from my mother. The shrill sound pierced the tense silence. I walked into the kitchen, turned off the burner, and listened as the kettle's shriek died down to a feeble hiss. Meanwhile, Hannah remained in the other room, sobbing softly. By the time I returned, she was hunched over, her forehead nearly touching the floor. Her tears formed small dark spots on the hardwood. I watched her for a moment, feeling more like a spectator to a tragedy than a husband. My voice came out hoarse. Get up, Hannah. She shook her head, as if she couldn't. Her words, broken. I'm so sorry. I took a shaky breath. I know. I walked past her, grabbed my car keys. I needed air, needed to be anywhere but inside these walls. I'm going, I muttered. She reached for my leg, but I sidestepped her grasp. I didn't slam the door on my way out. I shut it gently, with a strange finality. Outside, the night was cool, a slight drizzle in the air. I walked down the porch steps, got into my old Ford, and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked lifeless. I flicked on the engine, letting it idle. In my head, I kept picturing Lily's face, Hannah's tears, the words from that letter. I turned on the radio to some random station, the static crackle mingling with the patter of rain on the windshield. I ended up driving aimlessly through the wet streets of Seattle, empty except for occasional headlights slicing through the darkness. My mind replayed the moment I saw Hannah with Ryan in that park, the way her body molded to his, the hush of her laughter. Every cell in my body felt simultaneously numb and on fire. After what felt like an hour, I pulled over at a viewpoint overlooking the city lights. I gripped the wheel as if to anchor myself to something real. Was I going to walk away from everything? Could I stand to never hold Lily in my arms again? She was my daughter in every practical sense, but now I had a choice. Be the father or free myself of this betrayal. Even though my mind screamed that I'd been duped, that I should sever all ties, my heart clenched at the thought of losing her. That part I couldn't decide in a single night. All I knew was that I couldn't look at Hannah without picturing him. At some point, the swirling chaos in my head settled just enough for me to make a plan. I realized I needed a place to stay, a place away from her for at least a few days. My parents still lived in California, 1,000 miles away. My younger sister was in Boston. I was alone in Seattle, except for maybe a couple of old friends who might let me crash on a couch for a while. With a shaky exhale, I pressed down on the gas and headed back home to pack a bag. The irony of calling that place home stung me, but where else could I go? The house was dark when I returned, the living room lamp turned off. Hannah was still awake, though. I found her sitting in the kitchen, her eyes red-rimmed, an untouched mug of tea in front of her. The overhead light illuminated her face in stark shadows. She looked up as I entered, but didn't rise from her chair. She asked me quietly, "Where did you go?" I didn't answer right away. I stepped around her, opened a cupboard, took out a glass, and filled it with water. My hands were shaking. "I just drove," I finally muttered before gulping down the water. She twisted her hands in her lap. "Are you leaving me?" The directness of the question caught me off guard, though it shouldn't have. I pressed my palm against the cool countertop, thinking. My voice came out hollow. "I'm taking a few days. I need to think. Pack some things, maybe stay at a motel or a friend's place." A flicker of panic crossed her features. "But what about Lily? She'll notice you're gone." My heart lurched painfully at the mention of Lily's name. "Tell her I'm on a work trip. I'll figure out what to do after I process this." She let out a shaky breath and nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I understand." Without another word, I walked to our bedroom and grabbed a duffel bag. I stuffed in random clothes, socks, shirts, whatever was in the drawer. While I was in there, I caught sight of the framed photograph on our nightstand. Me, her, and Lily at the beach. Lily giggling in my arms, Hannah hugging us both. I turned the frame face down, unable to look at it. When I came back out, Hannah was standing in the hallway, her arms wrapped around her middle as if she were freezing. She watched me with an expression of heartbreak. I paused a moment, uncertain if I owed her any parting words. After all, we were married. This was our house, not just mine. She looked so small, so desperate. "Joe," she whispered, "I'm sorry." I nodded stiffly, unable to force out a reply. Then I left, hearing the door latch quietly behind me. I stood there on the porch, breathing in the cold, damp air, feeling like I was in a dream. I put my bag in the trunk and pulled away from the driveway, forcing myself not to glance back at the warm light glowing behind the windows. I ended up at a motel off the highway, the kind with flickering neon signs and a dingy reception area that smelled like stale coffee. The clerk barely registered me as I mumbled for a room, paid cash, and dragged my feet down the hall to a cramped space with a single bed and a flickering lamp. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, feeling emptier than I'd ever felt in my life. Through that night, and the nights that followed, I hardly slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw images. Hannah pressed up against Ryan, Lily giggling, the DNA results with those damning words, my own reflection in the mirror, hollow and ghost-like. I felt no appetite, so I lived on weak coffee and cheap takeout. The days blended. Hannah sent me texts, pleading with me to come home, to talk to her, to let her try to make it right. Ryan sent me a single text as well, which just read, "I got your letter. Sorry it turned out like this. I didn't bother replying. Sorry. That word had lost all meaning to me. At some point, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I answered it without thinking. The voice on the other end was warm and childish. Daddy? Mommy said you're away for work. Are you coming home soon? It was Lily. My heart clenched so hard I thought I might vomit. A wave of tears sprang to my eyes. Even though she wasn't mine by blood, she was still my daughter. My little girl. I cleared my throat, trying to steady my voice. Hey, sweetheart. I'll be back soon. Okay. Her voice lit up. I miss you. Mommy's sad all the time. Can we go to the zoo again when you come home? I swallowed painfully, forcing a smile she couldn't even see. Sure, baby. We'll go, I promise. When the call ended, I dropped onto the bed, staring at the chipped ceiling fan. My chest felt like an open wound. That was the moment I realized I couldn't just vanish. Lily needed me. Maybe I had no future with Hannah, but I couldn't punish the child who only knew me as her father. No matter how deeply Hannah had cut me, Lily was innocent. I had to find a way to separate my rage from my love for that little girl. I decided to meet Hannah in a public place, a quiet coffee shop near the motel, so we wouldn't be tempted to yell or break things in a fit of emotion. When she arrived, her eyes were puffy and exhausted. She slid into the booth across from me. The cafe was nearly empty. We ordered coffee, but neither of us touched it. I spotted the faint tremor in her hands as she tried to hold the cup. I cut to the chase. I'm not sure how we fix this. My voice was subdued. But I'm also not sure I can just walk away from Lily. She nodded, tears brimming again. I don't want you to. I never wanted to lose you as her father. You're everything to her. It was surreal, discussing fatherhood for a child who wasn't biologically mine. A child I'd raised from day one, never suspecting. What about Ryan? I asked. The question hung in the air, heavy. Hannah stared at me with wide eyes. Ryan doesn't want any part in her life, she said quietly. He never did. I told him I was pregnant back then, and he freaked out. He said it couldn't be his, or that even if it was, he had no interest in being tied down. So I never pressed him. I wanted Lily to have the stable family I thought you and I could provide. My jaw tightened. You thought lying was the best way to guarantee her stability. Her eyes dropped. I was a coward, she admitted. It wasn't fair to you. I know that. The emptiness in my chest only deepened, and yet you kept seeing him. Recently, at least, she swallowed. It was something I can't even explain. I was so lost. We argued a lot before, remember? You were always busy, always distant. I felt unloved, unappreciated. I'm not saying that justifies anything, but I let my weakness get the best of me. It reignited some spark, or maybe I was chasing the past, trying to see if he changed. He hasn't. I rubbed my face, the stubble rasping against my palm. A wave of fatigue washed over me. Do you still love him? She shook her head emphatically. No, it wasn't love. It was comfort in a twisted way, or a nostalgia for what might have been. I was stupid. I only realized how badly I'd messed up when I saw you leave. I looked away, gazing out the window at the gray sky. Sometimes I wonder if I'm already dead inside, I confessed quietly. Because I feel so numb, Hannah. I can't even scream or punch a wall. It's like all my emotions are locked up. She reached across the table, but I didn't take her hand. She pulled back, tears escaping silently. What do you need from me? She asked. How can I make amends? An odd, humorless laugh escaped me. Make amends? You can't undo that Lily isn't mine. You can't undo that you cheated again. I could forgive one mistake, maybe even the child, if you had come clean from the start. But you lied to me for 3 years, and then you gave yourself to him again. I don't know how to just bury that. She lowered her head, shoulders shaking. I sighed, feeling no satisfaction in her tears, just more exhaustion. The server approached us then. dropping off the check and hurrying away, sensing the tension. After a moment, Hannah whispered, "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm begging you for a chance to build a new trust, if that's even possible. Counseling, a separation, living apart, anything. But please don't say we're over. I love you." I closed my eyes, thinking of Lily's phone call. The image of her big hazel eyes, her trusting smile. "I need time," I finally said, voice rough. "I need to figure out if there's any way for me to be part of Lily's life without losing my mind." She nodded, tears falling. "Whatever you need." We talked a bit more, all in hushed, wounded tones, and by the end of that meeting, we agreed I'd keep my distance physically for a while, but that I'd come by to see Lily. We parted outside the coffee shop, and she gave me a long, sorrowful look before getting in her car and driving away. Over the next couple of weeks, I began a bizarre new routine. I'd arrive in the evenings to read Lily a bedtime story, then leave once she was asleep. We told her I was staying at a work apartment on assignment. She accepted the explanation with a child's innocence, though I saw questions in her eyes. Hannah made herself scarce whenever I was there, or quietly stayed in the kitchen, letting me have time with Lily. It tore me apart to see how easily Lily's face lit up when she saw me. She'd jump into my arms with the same pure love she'd always had, and I'd hold her tight, inhaling the sweet scent of her hair, wishing I could freeze time. On one of those evenings after I'd tucked Lily in, I came back downstairs and found Hannah waiting in the living room. She'd set out a mug of tea for me. The tension between us felt suffocating, but also strangely calmer, like the raging storm had passed, and we were left in the aftermath of devastation. She motioned toward the cup. "I made you some tea, if you want it." I hesitated, then sat on the couch. She sat a cautious distance away. We sipped tea in silence for a minute. Finally, she asked, "Do you hate me?" I stared at the dark liquid in my cup. "No," I murmured. "I hate what you did. But God help me, I still care." Her eyes shone with tears. "I don't deserve it." For once, I didn't contradict her. I let the silence speak. The old clock on the wall ticked steadily, measuring out the seconds. Eventually, I rose to leave. She followed me to the door, arms folded like she was hugging herself. We exchanged no words, but a current of raw emotion passed between us before I stepped into the night. In that time away, I tried to see a counselor on my own. I told him I felt like I was already a corpse, going through the motions of daily life. He suggested I was dealing with a form of grief. Grieving the loss of the marriage I thought I had. Grieving the betrayal. He asked if I wanted to salvage the relationship, or if I felt it was irreparably broken. I didn't have a clear answer. Ryan stayed out of the picture, as far as I could tell. He sent no more messages, made no attempts to see Lily. It was like he vanished into thin air. If Hannah felt any remorse or heartbreak over him, she didn't show it. She seemed fixated on one thing, trying to salvage our marriage. But trust is fragile, especially once it's been shattered. A month passed. 2. We existed in a strange limbo. My nights were still spent at that dingy motel, or sometimes on a friend's couch, when I felt too depressed to see the same cracked ceiling again. I missed Lily desperately, but each visit reminded me of the deception. I find Hannah's eyes lingering on me, searching my face for any sign of forgiveness. Sometimes she'd try to start a conversation about the future. Would I come home? Could we see a marriage counselor? Could we attempt a fresh start in a new neighborhood? Each time, I'd give a non-committal answer. During this period, I caught a glimpse of how revenge can seep into a man's heart, how it can poison the rational mind. I'd lie awake at night, imagining ways to punish Hannah, to humiliate Ryan. But every scenario ended with me feeling more wretched, more hollow. My father always told me that if you wrestle with pigs, you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. I refused to become something monstrous. The letter was enough. The break in trust was enough. Meanwhile, Lily was the only anchor that kept me from drifting into total darkness. The father-daughter bond I'd built with her was the single, undeniable truth in my life, even though we shared no blood. I realized I wanted to remain her dad, to guide her, protect her. That forced me to consider seeing if Hannah and I could rebuild. But each time I thought about it, I felt the recoil of disgust at her betrayal. Still, some nights, especially the lonely ones, I would recall how her head fit perfectly against my chest when we curled up on the sofa, and a wave of longing would crash over me. Love, even battered, bruised love, doesn't vanish overnight. It was a damp Sunday afternoon when my final decision crystallized. I'd spent the day with Lily at the aquarium, watching her marvel at the colorful fish, pointing at the sharks with a mixture of fear and wonder, had softened something inside me. On the drive back, she dozed off in her booster seat. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, at her sweet face, her small fists curled up by her chin. I felt that fierce paternal instinct, the same one I'd felt the day she was born. If I walked away from Hannah entirely, I might lose the chance to be Lily's everyday dad. Sure, I could fight for custody or partial guardianship, but the situation was complicated by biology. Legally, I was on her birth certificate, but that might not hold up if Ryan contested it. The idea of losing Lily frightened me more than anything else. We arrived home, and Hannah greeted Lily with a kiss on the forehead. I carried Lily upstairs, tucked her in for a nap, and then I found Hannah in the kitchen. She was preparing a snack, eyes rimmed with that familiar sadness. She looked up. "Joe, thank you. Thank you for taking her out today." She couldn't stop talking about it all morning. I nodded, leaning against the counter. The windows were fogged from the drizzle outside. We had a good time. She turned off the faucet and faced me. "I was thinking, we could make dinner together tonight. Maybe watch a movie with Lily." I let out a breath. "Hannah, we can't pretend everything's normal. It's not." She swallowed, her expression grim. "I know, but it's a start. I want to at least share these small moments as a family. Even if you decide later that you can't forgive me, I just want to give Lily a sense of togetherness." Silence stretched between us. I glanced at the floor, chewing on the inside of my cheek. Finally, I sighed. "Okay, let's try." That evening, we cooked spaghetti, the three of us in the kitchen. Lily rinsing lettuce, me chopping onions, Hannah boiling pasta. The air was filled with quiet tension, but also a strange sense of fragile hope. We ate together, Lily chattering about the aquarium, Hannah smiling softly, me forcing a small grin here and there. We watched some silly family movie in the living room, Lily snuggled between us. For a moment, I felt almost normal. Then my eyes slid to Hannah's face, and the wave of memories returned. Her laughter in the park with him. The day I followed her. The DNA results. My heart twisted painfully. When Lily yawned and rubbed her eyes, Hannah offered to put her to bed. I stayed on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen after turning it off. My fists clenched reflexively, as if preparing for a battle with myself. Not long after, Hannah tiptoed back, arms folded over her chest. She stood in the doorway, uncertainty radiating from her posture. She spoke softly. "I know you'll probably leave soon, back to your motel. But if you want to talk, I'm here." My shoulders tensed. "I don't have much to say." She nodded, eyes downcast. "Joe, I'm sorry if this feels like I'm pushing, but I'm worried. You're not just angry, you're hurting. I can see it. If you want me to leave you alone, say so. But if you need someone to talk to, even if it's just to yell at me, I'll stay." I shook my head, a sardonic grin twisting my lips. "Yelling won't fix it. I already told you, I feel dead inside." That's the best way I can describe it. Hannah bit her lower lip, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I'd do anything to bring you back." Her words hung in the air, echoing in my mind. I stared at her, memories flooding me, both beautiful and terrible. I let out a long sigh, feeling a lump in my throat. I love Lily, I murmured, voice wavering. That's the only thing I'm sure of. She nodded, tears shining. I know. We sank into a long, heavy silence, broken only by the distant ticking of the clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I stood. I should go, I muttered. Hannah followed me to the door, and as I reached for the handle, her hand gently touched my shoulder. I stiffened. What? I asked, voice harsher than intended. Her voice trembled. Thank you for tonight. For trying. I didn't answer, just opened the door and stepped out into the damp night air. I heard her soft exhale before I closed the door behind me. The hush of the suburbs at night felt almost eerie. I took a few steps toward my car, then paused. A wave of dizziness overcame me. I dropped my duffel bag onto the driveway, pressing a hand to my temple. My lungs felt tight, as though the air were too thick to breathe. In that brief moment, I saw a vivid memory. The day Lily was born. Hannah in the hospital bed, sweaty and exhausted, but beaming with maternal joy. She placed Lily in my arms, and I swore I felt my heart expand to the size of the universe. That memory was as real as my next breath, even if the foundation of it was built on deception. The love I felt then wasn't a lie, and that was the crux of my torment. The love was real. The lie was everything else. I sank onto the front steps, dropping my head into my hands. My entire body shook with silent sobs I'd held back for weeks. I had no idea how long I sat there, feeling the damp chill seeping into my bones. Eventually, I forced myself to stand, picked up my bag, and got into the car. The engine rumbled to life, and I left that house once more. In the days that followed, I tried to function at work, tried to keep up the appearance of normalcy. But everyone noticed the shift in me. Colleagues asked if I was okay, if everything was all right at home. I brushed them off with vague answers. On the outside, I was stoic. Inside, I was in constant turmoil. Finally, a turning point arrived in the simplest of forms. Lily's daycare organized a father-daughter day. They invited dads to come in, do some activities, read a story, have a small party. Lily was so excited, she drew pictures of the two of us. Stick figures with big smiles, crayons in bright colors. When she handed them to me, her eyes sparkled. "Daddy, you'll come, right?" Something in my heart squeezed painfully. "I'll be there," I promised. And I meant it. That Friday I arrived at the daycare, and Lily ran into my arms. Other fathers were there, smiling, chatting, helping their kids with little crafts. I sat on a tiny chair next to Lily, watching her concentrate on gluing sparkly stars to a piece of paper. She glanced at me every few seconds, beaming like I was her hero. My throat felt tight with emotion. That was when I realized I couldn't abandon her. Even if Hannah and I never recovered, even if I had to push my own pain aside, I would remain Lily's father. Because nothing was more important than that little girl's happiness. No DNA test could change the fact that she saw me as her dad, that I'd raised her, loved her, cared for her. If there was a real definition of fatherhood, it was me. And that meant I had a decision to make. Try to rebuild my marriage for Lily's sake, or co-parent in some broken arrangement. I wrestled with that question as I walked Lily home afterward, her small hand in mine. The crisp autumn wind swirling leaves at our feet. When we reached the house, Hannah opened the door. Lily bounded inside with excitement, showing off her crafts. I lingered on the porch. Hannah gazed at me uncertainly. "Joe." I swallowed hard. "We need to talk," I said. She nodded, stepping aside to let me in. Lily was already in the living room, turning on the TV to watch her favorite cartoon. Hannah led me into the dining room, the memory of that letter reading still haunting the air. I kept my voice low so Lily couldn't overhear. "I decided I'm not going to leave Lily," I said, "no matter what happens between us." She nodded, eyes softening. "I understand. I'd never want to keep her from you." I inhaled slowly. That said, I can't pretend it doesn't kill me to be around you. Every time I look at you, I see him, see the betrayal. But I also love you, even though it feels like I've been shot in the heart. Hannah's eyes brimmed with tears, and she clasped her hands together. Joe, I swear on my life, I'll do anything to show you I'm worthy of your trust again. It might take years, but I'll do it. My gaze swept her face, her trembling lips, her tear-stained cheeks. An ache spread through my chest. We can't just pick up where we left off, I said, voice cracking. That's gone. If we try, we have to start from scratch. That means no more lies, not even small ones. No more secret phone calls, no more illusions. She nodded fervently. Yes, I'll give you full access to my phone, my emails, whatever you need. I grimaced. This isn't about reading your messages. It's about whether I can live with the knowledge of what you did. My voice dropped. And whether you can live with a man who might never trust you the same way again. Her lower lip quivered, but she nodded. If that's the price I have to pay, I'll accept it. Silence stretched out, thick with unsaid words. Finally, Lily's laughter from the living room pierced the tension. Hannah glanced that way, her expression wistful. You two mean everything to me. Even if you can't believe that anymore, it's true. I shook my head, feeling tears sting my eyes. I do believe you. That's what makes this so damn painful. She wiped at her cheeks. Can you stay tonight? With us? Even if it's just to read Lily her bedtime story and have dinner. My throat felt dry. Part of me wanted to retreat back to the motel, nurse my wounds in isolation. But I thought of Lily's face at the daycare, how proud she was to have me there. I'll stay, I said at last, voice low. But don't expect miracles. She exhaled shakily, relief washing over her features. We walked into the living room together, where Lily was sprawled on the rug, coloring pictures of fish from the aquarium. She lifted her head, beamed at me, then at Hannah. Daddy, look, she cried, waving a crayon drawing. I forced a smile and ruffled her hair. Hannah settled on the couch, and I sat beside her, not touching, just sharing the space. That night, we had a simple dinner, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. We helped Lily with a small puzzle. We laughed together at her silly jokes, though the laughter between Hannah and me was strained, ghostly. When bedtime came, I followed Lily upstairs, read her a story about a friendly dragon, and watched her eyes slowly droop. For a moment, I felt an overwhelming gratitude just for that fleeting peaceful moment. Downstairs, Hannah waited. I found her in the laundry room, ironically enough, folding some clothes. The overhead light flickered, reminding me of the day I'd confronted her with the DNA results. My stomach twisted, but I approached her, clearing my throat. I'll sleep in the guest room, I said. I'm not ready to share our bed. She nodded quietly. I understand. I left her there, in that same spot where everything had imploded. The memory of those wrinkled shirts and the hush of her shock haunted me. In the guest room, I lay awake for hours, listening to the quiet hum of the house. The wind rattled the windows, and my mind drifted to the image of that photograph turning to ash. It was as though that moment marked the death of our old life. What rose from those ashes, if anything, remained to be seen. In the following weeks, we entered a fragile, uncomfortable period of cohabitation. I slowly moved my things back from the motel. My toothbrush, my clothes, my laptop, half convinced I'd rush back out at the first sign of heartbreak. But Hannah remained patient, taking whatever scraps of closeness I offered. We began therapy together, a once-a-week session that felt like ripping scabs off of festering wounds. We talked about the betrayal, about Ryan, about Lily's paternity. The therapist asked me to put my pain into words, which was like vomiting shards of glass. You sound like you're already mourning the end of your marriage, the therapist observed, her calm voice laced with empathy. Do you think you're able to let that old marriage die and try to build a new one? I felt my throat tighten. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Sometimes I think I am. Other times I feel disgusted." Hannah listened, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'm here," she whispered, "for as long as it takes." There were nights I'd wake up drenched in sweat, nightmares replaying the scene in the park, but worse, with graphic detail. I'd see them not just kissing, but locked in a raw embrace. It would jolt me awake, heart pounding. A few times, I turned over in bed and saw Hannah lying beside me. We'd started sleeping in the same room again, albeit with a gulf of space between us. When I'd wake from those nightmares, she'd look at me with concern, but I'd turn away. It took everything in me not to shout accusations or hateful words. Yet, oddly, each day that passed without further secrets chipped away at my hardened shell. Lily's laughter, Hannah's earnest efforts to open up about her feelings, the mundane rhythms of daily life slowly began to weave a new pattern. It was different from what we had before, darker, more guarded, but strangely more honest. I found myself allowing small moments of tenderness, a gentle hand on her back as I passed by, a shared smile at one of Lily's jokes, a quick squeeze of her hand when she said she was proud of me for something small. One evening, after Lily was asleep, I sat in the living room, flipping through channels endlessly. Hannah appeared behind me. Without a word, she sat on the couch. A half hour passed with neither of us really watching the TV. Finally, she spoke in a strained whisper, "Joe, I miss you. I miss being close to you." I stared at the flickering images on the screen, my pulse picking up. "Don't push," I muttered, but there was less bite in my tone than before. She nodded, eyes glistening. Then she slid closer, cautiously, until our shoulders touched. We sat like that, side by side, breathing in the same air. My heart thundered with a mixture of longing and anger, but I didn't move away. The hush of the house enveloped us. Slowly, almost timidly, I let my hand slip over hers. The contact felt electric. She squeezed back, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. For a moment, neither of us said another word. But that small gesture felt like a fragile truce. Over the next few months, we kept inching toward each other in small ways, learning to navigate the treacherous terrain of our new reality. Hannah swore off any contact with Ryan, and from what I could tell, he never tried to reach her or Lily. He seemed content to vanish from the picture entirely. We argued from time to time, new conflicts about old wounds, about her deception, about my lingering resentment, about how we'd explain Lily's paternity if she ever questioned it. Those fights were brutal, but each time, we chose to stay, to keep talking. Slowly, I found my feelings for Hannah shifting from cold resentment to a complicated mix of anger, sorrow, and a trace of love that refused to die. The memory of her betrayal would flare up, and I'd distance myself for a few days, sleeping in the guest room, rarely speaking to her. Then I'd see Lily hugging her mother, see the genuine remorse in Hannah's eyes, and feel that same persistent tug in my chest. Even in the darkest nights, a spark of what we once had lingered. Yet there were also times I nearly walked out for good. Times the mental images were too vivid. Her hands on his body, her lips parted in a sigh meant for him. I'd pack a bag, sit in my car, engine running, tears on my cheeks. But something always made me kill the engine and return inside. Maybe I truly was a fool in love, or maybe I believed that a new battered sort of marriage was better than living in bitterness. When Hannah realized how close I'd been to leaving, she broke down, sobbing that she'd do anything to keep me. That no matter how long it took, she'd spend her life making it right. Those words weighed heavily on me. I saw the desperation in her eyes, and I felt it mirrored in my own battered heart. Months stretched into a year. Our progress in therapy continued, rocky but determined. Lily grew older, noticing tension now and then, but mostly thriving under our renewed commitment to family life. I stayed. I began to see that, although we could never erase the past, we might forge something new out of the wreckage. One chilly evening, I found an old photo album from our earlier years. Wedding photos, honeymoon snapshots, candid pictures of us laughing in the backyard. My chest ached as I flipped through them, remembering the naive happiness we once shared. Hannah came in, saw the album on my lap, and hesitated. Then she sat beside me, her warmth so close. She didn't touch me, just watched as I turned the pages. After a long silence, she said softly, "I wish I could go back in time and fix what I did." I closed the album, exhaling slowly. "We can't go back, only forward." She nodded, tears in her eyes, and gently reached for my hand. I let her fingers entwine with mine. "Then I'll move forward with you, if you'll let me." I looked at her. The woman who betrayed me yet still held my heart. "All right," I whispered. "Let's move forward." In that moment, I felt the strangest sense of relief. We'd never be the same carefree couple in those photos, but maybe we could become something else. Wiser, scared, but still reaching for love. I recognized that trusting her would take years, and perhaps I'd never trust her completely again. But for Lily's sake, and maybe for my own battered soul, I was willing to try. Because in the end, love remained, even after all the lies, the betrayal, and the bone-deep pain. In some corner of my heart, I still loved her. Enough to see if we could build a future out of the ashes of the past. And so, in that sense, the old me really did die when I dropped that photograph into the flame. The life I thought I had ended that day. But from the silence, from the numbness, something else emerged. A man who knew the depths of betrayal, yet still found a spark of loyalty. A man who refused to let his daughter grow up without him, no matter her paternity. A man who, perhaps foolishly, held on to a shred of hope that a broken marriage could be reborn. Only time will tell if it's possible. But for now, I live in that fragile hope. I stand beside Hannah, forging the new reality in the same old house, under the same flickering light bulbs and ticking clocks. And every so often, I remember the letters I wrote, the rage I felt, the vow I made to walk away. Yet, here I am, leaning into the slow, painful process of rebuilding. Maybe I'll never be whole again. But maybe, just maybe, I'll learn to live with these scars. And, against all odds, find a way to love once more.